Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, you'd think being in the middle of summer, things would be a lot more smooth, but COVID cases are actually yet once again on the rise here in the United States. We're going to talk a little bit about protests that are taking place in several nations and the reasons why, and a top-ranking Hamas leader was recently killed. But first, in the United States, COVID cases are spiking in 40 states. The number of cases currently are at their highest since February of this year, and experts say that one of the main reasons is that COVID is constantly evolving to stay ahead of our immune system, the aka variants. Also, one's immunity to infection only lasts about 3 months, and one's immunity to disease and hospitalization and death lasts much longer, which they say is why people aren't getting sick the way they were early on in the pandemic.
Well, it is expected to see COVID cases rise every few months or twice a year. Now, current guidelines, if you're suspected of contracting COVID, is to stay away from others for at least 24 hours of being fever-free or your symptoms improve overall. But precaution should continue for 5 more days because the risk of transmission is still there. Now, the KN95 and the N95 masks should be worn as they do reduce transmission to others while you're infected.
Well, the Catholic Church is poised to celebrate its 1700th year anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicea in 2025. Now, the next video sheds some light on the upcoming events, locations, and the main players. Let's take a look.
There is only 1 year left until the Church celebrates the 1700th anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council in history, the Council of Nicea. In 2025, Orthodox and Catholics plan to celebrate this historic date together. The celebration includes 2 key events. One is the potential trip of the Pope to Turkey, where he also visited in 2014. Although the Vatican has not confirmed this, the advisor of Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople has indicated that Francis plans to attend this celebration. Bartholomew proposed to hold it in Nicea, in present-day Turkey. The ruins of the First Ecumenical Synod are there. It is a significant event, and preparations have already begun. Initiatives are underway, and speeches are being prepared. The other event could take place in Rome. During the Patriarch's most recent visit to the Vatican in June, Francis not only said that he wholeheartedly wishes to go to Nicea, he also invited them to participate in the Jubilee in the Eternal City, which also marks the Jubilee year for the Orthodox Church.
The 1700th anniversary, Katan, I mean, already all the preparations are in full swing. They've been preparing for, or will be once the event takes place, for over a year. Wow. Well, Turkey's president has called out to the Pope after Israel's recent attacks on Lebanon and Iran, asking him to put pressure on Israel's allied countries in order to end the attacks. Now, the Pope and the President spoke on the phone about the matter and even raised concerns about the controversial scene at the Olympics and said that it is important to raise our voices together and take a common stand. Now, the last time the two met was at the G7 summit, but communication between the two has stayed regular.
Even though the two leaders agree on many things, there have been some disagreements on several hot button issues. For example, the Christian community, especially the Orthodox community, was offended when Erdogan ordered the conversion of the Hagia Sophia Museum. That museum there was converted into a mosque.
Well, in Venezuela, protests are ongoing since the election results of the new president were released. Now, the opposition, who claims they won the election, wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, which said, quote, "I am writing this from hiding, fearing for my life, my freedom, and that of my fellow countrymen from the dictatorship led by Nicolas Maduro."
The op-ed continued, quote, "Maduro did not win the Venezuelan election on Sunday. He lost in a landslide to Edmundo Gonzalez, 67% to 30%. Well, I know this to be true because I can prove it. I have receipts obtained directly from more than 80% of the polling stations," end quote. Even Secretary of State Anthony Blinken issued a statement acknowledging Gonzalez as the winner of those elections Sunday.
Well, we're now going to turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has been covering some additional protests, this time in Nigeria. There they are protesting some of the increases in cost and also some of the cuts that they've been receiving from the government not supplying them with certain petroleum products. So, Larry, what's the latest?
In times such as these, turmoil and unrest for various reasons are an expected thing. The latest location catching headlines is Nigeria, where protests have erupted due to overburdening socio-economic conditions. With the country already showing signs of economic strangulation evidenced by the fingerprints of devalued currency, Nigerians who are hard-pressed have taken to the streets to demand change. Please have a look at this video.
We are not going to stop until every Nigerian can live comfortably in Nigeria.
The most important demand of the protesters is the reintroduction of the oil subsidy. They said when the government announced the withdrawal of subsidy on petroleum products last year at the inauguration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, everything went up. The price of everything went up, from fuel, to food items, even electricity tariffs were raised.
We are tired of being hungry. We cannot even feed our children. One tuber of yam is 5,000. We cannot buy tomato and pepper. Pepper is 1,000. The poor cannot survive. Please, we need you to change the government.
There are quite a number of analysts who have been predicting the end of the current system, but as the world's strongest economy, America is likely to retain its strength all the way up until the end. Still, and although there are fluctuations, and there are now some present concerns of a recession. Fears are related to the activity of the U.S. stock market, in addition to things such as more Americans applying for unemployment benefits and analyst observations regarding the strength of the manufacturing sector. While it is not yet certain that the U.S. is headed for a recession at this point, analysts say it cannot be ruled out. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Well, with the population in Lagos, Nigeria of over 16 million people, you could expect that they're really feeling the pressure. And you saw a lot of the frustration and the pleas from the citizens begging for some type of assistance or the lowering of the prices so they could just afford their basic everyday needs.
Right, just the basics.
That's right. Well, this next video shows how the protests in Venezuela have gone violent, resulting in at least 11 reported deaths. Venezuelans have taken to the streets angry that their voting voice was not heard through the election process. Now, the people are calling on the United States to help them declare Edmundo Gonzalez the winner. Please take a look.
Political unrest is intensifying in Venezuela following its disputed presidential election. President Biden and other leaders today calling on the country's government to release voting data amid widespread accusations of fraud. CBS's Lilia Luciano has new reporting tonight on the chaos in Caracas.
Another day of violent protests in Venezuela. Thousands have taken to the streets outraged over the re-election of authoritarian leader Nicolas Maduro. Brawls erupting in the capital and across the country throughout the night and day today. Some clashing with the National Guard or calling fraud. Protesters toppled symbols of the socialist regime, seen burning flyers of Venezuela's strongman. At least 11 have reportedly died so far. But this afternoon in eastern Caracas, a bright contrast of confident hope.
People are chanting libertad, freedom, and rushing to get a glimpse of Maria Corina Machado, the leader of the opposition. And the man, they say today, is their president-elect, Edmundo González Urrutia.
Johanna Campbell says many of her family members have had to leave Venezuela since Maduro came to power, and is pleading for the international community to step in.
I need you guys to support us, to proclaim Edmundo González as our president. That's what we need.
That's what you'd like to see from the U.S. government,
yes,
from the White House.
Of course, that's what I want from the White House. To say, people in Venezuela went outside peacefully. They voted for the people they want to be the president.
Citing tally certificates, Machado claimed opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia had more than double the number of votes than Maduro. While in other parts of Caracas, government loyalist gangs continue to intimidate civilians and attack protesters. This as the president of the National Assembly has called for the arrest of Machado and Maduro's challenger for what they say is inciting violence.
And tonight, the protests are picking up again. We're hearing from these folks who say, we're not criminals. We're not trying to be violent. We tried it the right way by voting. But they believe the election was stolen, and they're ready now to confront the police.
Well, Catan, you can certainly see the frustration that they're under. Of course, they were hoping to do it peacefully through the voting process, but that didn't work. And now they're protesting this way. But it seems like the government is going to crack down on them pretty severe. Well, in the Middle East news, a chief negotiator in the ceasefire talks for Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed in Beirut, Lebanon, following his attendance at an inauguration of the new Iranian president. Now, the airstrike killed 4 people, which included 2 children, and wounded 70 more people. Now, it brought hundreds of angry Iranians to the streets.
In a separate strike just hours earlier, Hezbollah leader was also assassinated. While it almost never occurs, the Israeli military took responsibility for the strike, which killed the Hezbollah's most senior military commander. In fact, in a public announcement, an Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson named their target as Fouad Shakur. He was the head of Hezbollah's strategic unit and responsible for a rocket attack over the weekend, which took the lives of 12 young people in the Golan Heights.
Well, before there could be any response or reaction from Hezbollah to the killing, Iranian state TV was announcing the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. Now, Israel has not claimed responsibility for Haniyeh's death, but Iran believes they are to blame, and the Iranian Guard has ordered an overhauling of their own government security. Haniyeh was also leading the ceasefire and hostage release negotiations for Hamas.
He was noted as being more moderate and practical than his military counterparts who have been fighting a brutal war with Israel in Gaza for the last 10 months. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, quote, all-out war in the region is still not inevitable, end quote. However, that statement might just be hoping for the best as we wait to see how Iran will respond.
Well, is there a new nuclear race beginning to take place in the world? Now, the United States government is seriously considering deploying more of their nuclear weapons into the field. Our final video delves into government's reasoning for pushing nuclear weapons into the spotlight and potential future plans. Please pay close attention.
So as tensions rise globally, the United States reportedly is considering a significant expansion of its deployed nuclear arsenal. And this critical decision, however, lies in the hands of the American president. Our next report gets you the details of the evolving nuclear capabilities of China, North Korea and Russia as potential triggers for the changing posture of America's current nuclear forces.
The prospect of a reignited nuclear arms race haunts the globe. Once the undisputed nuclear power, the U.S. is now mulling an expansion of its atomic arsenal in response to the expanding capabilities of Russia and China. U.S. is also considering a significant shift in its nuclear posture. Pentagon officials also indicate a likely increase in the number of its deployed nuclear warheads.
Absent a change in the nuclear trajectories of the PRC, Russia, and North Korea, we may reach a point where a change in the size or posture of our current deployed forces is necessary. There is no need to grow the stockpile yet, but adjustments to the number of deployed capabilities may be necessary if our adversaries continue down their current paths.
The issue comes in the wake of Russia flaunting its nuclear prowess through high-profile drills, the third of such displays this summer. These exercises focus on the use of tactical, non-strategic nuclear weapons designed for battlefield scenarios. Last month, Russian President Putin issued a stark warning to the U.S. against deploying long-range missiles in Germany. Putin threatened to restart production of intermediate-range nuclear weapons and position them within striking distance of Western targets. The U.S. currently holds an estimated 3,700 warheads in its active arsenal. These include 1,670 thermonuclear warheads ready to be deployed on long-range missiles from land and sea, or delivered by strategic bombers. Additionally, about 100 tactical nuclear bombs are prepared for deployment via shorter-range aircraft. On the other hand, nuclear-armed nations, particularly Russia and China, are modernizing and potentially expanding their arsenals. China, for instance, has tested and deployed new systems and recently halted nuclear arms talks with the U.S. over Taiwan weapons sales. U.S. intelligence forecasts predict that China could possess up to 1,000 nuclear weapons by 2030. Many of them will be mounted on an expanding force of intercontinental ballistic missiles. These developments underscore a growing nuclear arms race as major powers enhance their nuclear capabilities amid escalating geopolitical tensions. The strategic decisions taken in Washington will play a crucial role in shaping the balance of nuclear power, with far-reaching implications for global security.
Well, you know, it would be nice if the world leaders would be truly looking at not just a reduction in nuclear weapons, but also steps moving towards actually finding a peaceful solution where there would be no need for nuclear weapons. There would be no need for militaries at all.
Right. Sadly, that isn't the mentality of the leaders today. Instead, just like we saw, they're all pushing for more nuclear weapons, more out in the field, and all taking the steps to be better prepared for their for an attack from their so-called enemies.
That's right. And there's been so many meetings, so many talks, so many, G7 meetings and so forth, and they've not come any closer, to actually finding a solution to the problems. In fact, it seems like the leaders have just become more angry over the years.
Right, and actually further away from any type of peace.
That's right.
Well, if you'd like to find out more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them by going to any of their websites at yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com, or visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com, and for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget the Yisrael Says and Ask Yisrael programs available to aid you in your study and understanding of the Scriptures. You can find those two programs free online by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.